right, today's guest is founder of Unknown Midwest. Andrew Peterson is here today. Thanks for joining us on Deviatus, and welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So you're the founder of Unknown Midwest. Can you tell us a little bit about what that site is about and how long you've been around, and possibly what prompted you to create it?
Yeah, it's just been a relatively new thing. We started in beginning of October. It kind of all came together because of some like previous blog experience I've had, and just kind of like interesting conversations that I always kind of seem to have with a bunch of friends. The kind of the main basis behind it was like because of conversations I've had with like my team. They've it's kind of just adapted from the blog I've already started, and I just wanted to basically make a platform for newcomers to like these kind of topics to kind of branch out, just get kind of intermixed and let us kind of like guide them through it.
Now, is it mainly like educational for people who want to learn about it, or is it more of a like, come and share your story? It's a welcome place.
Well, I think it's getting to that point. Right now, I've got a couple emails from folks. Like, I think the biggest thing, like I shared a personal experience that I've had with, like me and my girlfriend have had some weird things kind of happen around here, and I kind of hesitantly posted that, and that's actually kind of how we kind of like formed our little thing here. But I think it took me to kind of like get out of my comfort zone and like talk about things that I may not talk about outside of my group of friends. So I think right when I did that, my sister posted something of hers. Like we started getting emails from like other people, like, oh, I've had like similar experiences. My girlfriend does this, or my husband does this, and there's been like weird interactions after that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the main thing I always think about when I think of like paranormal websites is I think of like scary places on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't always think like they're always welcoming. Like, say for example, I look at your website, it's very, very to the point, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like covered in like macabre type looking things. It's not old 90s font. It's just kind of inviting and comfortable.
I'll take that as a compliment. I purposefully tried to avoid that. So sorry to interrupt you, but thank you.
No, it's fine. It's perfect. I mean, the thing is, like, I feel like you have to kind of have some kind of edge or some sort of like inviting kind of thing for people to be okay to talk to you. Because like these kind of things are not always easy to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just us getting out and putting our experiences out, like we can get more into it. That's not like my main goal with the website. I think it's really just to talk about like all these things that like my friends and I talk about. He can basically take anything that like may not even have a whole lot of story to it. The stories that we kind of build on it and just actually kind of make it interesting and make almost people like look into it. Heard about or like seen on TV. And it was kind of interesting because the only reason like we became a thing, or we became friends, I should say, is because of like just talking about these kind of like paranormal shows that we'd seen. And we both worked in a retail store at the same time. My buddy Derek, who I mentioned earlier, him, Jeremiah, myself, an old roommate, we'd all get together and watch these paranormal shows and kind of like build our opinions on it. So I think basically getting back to the website, it was a way for us to like talk about these things and maybe bring attention in different ways and kind of try to make things a little bit more clear on the internet, because a lot of times it's just not that clear and it gets really convoluted really easily.
Now, when you say clear, do you mean like more accurate, or?
I think that's kind of where my sister kind of gets into things. So like Jeremiah, Derek, and myself you can't call us experts by any means. We're just basically putting information out. Now, my sister Kirsten is, best way I can put it, she studied art and then she also studied European history.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that point, she got her master's degree in library science and what I'm trying to think here. It was library science and then just like mass communication type work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting because if we kind of come to like a brick wall, like she has ways, like, I don't know how she does it. It's amazing. Like she can find like resources, articles online, like archival type stuff, like newspapers, and kind of brings us more of like a like not a journalistic edge, but something that's more tangible for us to like reach out. Because if you think of like things like Slender Man on the internet, like that's something that's basically just was made in a chat room in a way, or a forum,
Right.
and then people grew on it. So it's kind of, when you think of things like, say, like Bigfoot, or I know like one of my favorite article that I wrote was Beast of Bray Road. Like there's like news articles that she was able to find. I was able to like read Linda Godfrey's book. Like just finding different resources that aren't like internet based is kind of a big thing for me. But it all kind of starts on the internet, I feel like, and then we branch out and actually get hardcore materials.
And I think that's what really drew me to your site is you do have, you mentioned things like police reports and I'm trying to remember which story it was. I think the one that you were referring to where your girlfriend was mentioned was the one called Attachment, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and that's one I really identified with. I thought, wow, I've had similar experiences myself. But so you've got multiple people involved in this. I think I was under the impression it was just you and your sister, but you've got more than that.
Yeah, I think. Well, the thing is, like, my sister and I, like, we were the main two that started this off, because my sister just wanted to like kind of flex her talents, and she loves the paranormal type stuff. Like her daughter, for example, loves like ancient aliens. Like she can't get enough of it, which I find fascinating, because that's like the same way I was as a kid. The like Jeremiah, like I had to bring in just because like he loves this stuff as well. Like him and I would like talk about Destination Truth, and like we'd send each other like Josh Gate memes and like all these kind of funny things. And Derek was just kind of like more of a skeptical friend that just like could lead kind of like the design and kind of get all these pieces. So I think when it comes down to it, like the only reason I'm able to push out like articles like weekly, like we've been doing, is because I have 3 other people to actually kind of critique it, like edit it, find me the appropriate resources, and then I can just spew it out and just get it done. And I think it's just there's a lot of times where I feel like there are groups of people that are even individuals that can benefit really well from having a team, and I just wanted to select people that can basically make what I want to do like even better, and that's why they had to be a part of it.
Right, and there are already people that you knew and you were having these conversations with, so
and I could trust them. That was the biggest thing too. Like if I was going to involve anybody with it, I had to trust these people. I had to be able to relate to them. I had to have some sort of kind of bond, and I had to understand that like if they're having problems, like I can kind of reach out to them, or vice versa. It's kind of an amazing team, because like Jeremiah and Derek haven't even met my sister, but like the chats that we have on our we use an app called Basecamp, which has been a huge kind of like thing to keep us all connected, because we're all in different areas. And like my sister's in Kalamazoo, I'm in Des Moines, Derek and Jeremiah are around Des Moines, so it's kind of keeping us all in like one team mentality. But it's just worked out so perfectly so far.
Okay. Well, anytime I interview someone, I'm really interested in like the origin story of things. And in our email correspondence before we sat down today, you mentioned going to school in Camden, South Carolina, where there's sightings of a lizard man. So I'd love to hear any firsthand encounters or rumors that you've heard, having been from there.
Well, luckily I never had to witness a lizard man or had like my car attacked by a lizard man or anything like that. But I think it was just kind of one of those things. I went to a military school there. You probably like search Camden, South Carolina, you'll find that military school. And it's kind of one of those things. Like I went there from my 7th grade year to my senior year of high school. And it's kind of an interesting area. Like you've got all the Revolutionary history, you've got all that, all the Civil War history, and then you have all the paranormal things that kind of pop up with that. And I know like the biggest thing in like Spartanburg, South Carolina, was the not Spartanburg, excuse me, Bishopville, South Carolina, was like Lizard Man, like 80s and 90s type of thing. And it was kind of always one of those weird things. Like we have like duty, like or pseudo duty, where we'd have to go around and check the campus. And that was kind of one of those things, like from like 9th grade to my senior year, like I had that as a duty that I had to do. Like we'd get together, like be 2 of us, like an officer and a non-commissioned officer cadet, that would kind of go through and we'd inspect the campus. Now, the thing about the lizard man that was always interesting is and kind of relates to like even Midwestern type stuff, was we had a cadre member, like one of the faculty, that would kind of help like run the books and make sure like anything that needed maintenance, for example, on the campus was taken care of. And one of his things that he would always do to the younger cadets is he'd tell a story about Dogman. and it was just he'd kind of get this low kind of voice and be like, "Have you seen any dog men today?" And then like kind of go into his little story about it. And it was always kind of a fun thing. And I was also in like Civil Air Patrol, so when we'd get up, we'd have to go out to the swamps. We'd have to do flights around the swamps. You'd get into like conversations with people, and like you'd get other people like kind of like razzled and freaked out about having to stay up and do fire watch or whatever at like 3 o'clock in the morning. But luckily I hadn't seen any lizard man. It's like a topic I've always liked. It's kind of a crazy thing that I just, if it exists, and I'm sure there's got to be something out there that exists, it would definitely like shatter like a lot of my beliefs. I'll put it that way.
Well, let me interrupt you for a second, because you know, when this guy that you're talking about was kind of getting into his low voice and talking about Dogman, was he actually serious? Did he have any sort of like, did he have a true belief in this, or was he just kind of trying to rile the kids up?
I think he was just trying to rile the kids up. I think it was just kind of one of those playful things, and I think it kind of went along those kind of like paranormal routes. Now, I think the one thing I'd say, it kind of sent you like a little bit of a brief kind of intro about it, like in my email, but to like kind of tell your listeners, like my whole like shift in this whole field was basically an incident that took place at that academy. And it was actually on duty. Now, I mean, like backstory, like I've always kind of been interested in these things. Like I remember watching like Scariest Places on Earth, like In Search Of, like reruns on History Channel, like all those things, but I never kind of like believed fully like what was kind of going on. I always thought it was kind of like dramatized for like TV. But my junior year at the academy, I was on duty, and it was myself and my roommate that were basically going through and checking like doors in the campus, like making sure it was locked. It was probably, I think, about 8:30, maybe 9 o'clock at night. It was like a full moon. Like it was kind of like the whole campus was really well lit. And we're walking around, basically checking doors, and we get to the library, check the door, all locked. There's about, I can't remember how many doors there were. There's basically about 6 doors, if I can remember right, that we had to check. And there was these two doors like surrounded by kind of glass in the front, and then like kind of this sitting area with like a monument in kind of the middle. And we walk down the steps. We see another cadet who was one of our friends, and we start talking, and we sit down kind of at this little monument area. Now, my roommate, James, and I are both kind of looking up, you know, kind of in the view of the library and the front doors. And the best way I can put it, it was kind of crazy. Like, like the two of us kind of like looked up, and we thought the door closed. And we're like, that doesn't make any sense. So we stopped our friend from talking and walked up, and the door was locked. So I kind of like peeked in, and it was really interesting because what happened was like you kind of think like your like public library type situation. You got a table and like some showcase books. Well, one of the books basically decided just to fall over, like slide back and fall over, and you could kind of see it through the moonlight reflecting. And I was like, that's super weird. I thought like somebody got in and was like playing a trick with us, because like there's no way. We like the door was locked. We saw it just open and close randomly. Like it didn't make any sense. So we had to get a set of keys and bring like one of our like faculty members out to check the library. But when we were walking up to the library, like in the left window, it looked like a person was just standing there, like a black silhouette was just kind of standing there. And the best I can put it, it just kind of didn't like evaporate, but it kind of swooped away, kind of like you think of like a cloaked man like running away in the night. It kind of had like that wispy kind of dematerialized like out of nowhere. So thinking like a cadet was like playing around, we kind of jumped up, like sprinted up to the library, and then got in. And it was kind of crazy. Like we're walking in the library, we're kind of like a little frazzled because we're like, what the heck is going on here? Right. So checked all the doors, everything else. It was fine. Like no one was there. So I couldn't believe it. I saw, because I'd seen like shows like Ghost Hunters, like where they have like ghost like shadow people, but to like actually witness it and like see something just kind of dematerialize before my eyes was crazy, and I couldn't fathom what it was. So I think at that point I was just hooked on it.
Now was this something that was sort of transparent, or like could you tell if it was a male or female?
It's kind of hard to. I'll put it this way: it was just like a human form. I think at this point we're probably less than 100 yards away from it, but you could definitely like looking through the glass and how well lit things were, you could definitely see that there was like someone standing there. And it wasn't like I tried rationalizing it the rest of that night because like we still had to go walk around the campus at like past dark, like still making things were okay. And knowing the fact that I had to like pass by this library, like I tried like coming in at the same angles, like the two of us were like still like talking about it. Like we're trying to figure out exactly what it was. We're trying to figure out like the moonlight was playing like tricks on us. Like nothing made sense with this because we look at this building every day. Like we've been in these environments every day, and like for that just to be there and then gone was interesting to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you ever report that to anybody?
So I think when it comes down to it, like it was something that I'd heard like other cadets talk about. Like I know there's a back road that kind of leads up to the airport that's adjacent to this campus, and people had seen like this is kind of like that Dogman type thing kind of comes out. They always like thought they saw someone walking down it or like a dark figure walking down that. So I think there's not really anywhere to like report it. Like we had to of course like say something like, oh, we had to go check the library twice, but that's really all we really had to do. I know the faculty member that we had to get was like kind of like, why are you guys making me do this right now kind of thing. But we just had to check and do our due diligence. But yeah, I think it's just that whole area. Like I know the airport that's next to the campus was I guess used for like training during World War II for some kind of aircraft. I really can't remember at this point, but the barracks were used for like house like military personnel. I know there was always rumors about there possibly being like POWs that were held, and I don't really think that's true, but it's kind of like the whole folklore that kind of goes about around that kind of area. But I know the buildings were moved from time to time. I think I heard a rumor that at one point, and I think I need to look into this one further now that I actually have proper resources. Like apparently the library at one point was possibly like a hospital or used as like a medical area for the airport that was next door. So you never kind of know, like may have flowed through that building at like a previous time. But I think that's all kind of like speculation and like hearsay. But actually being able to like see like that kind of event, and, like have other people that are, like I kind of trust and like know that aren't going to just like blow smoke up me. Like it kind of like stuck.
Yeah, and what's interesting is those are the types of places that you look for to really get in there and investigate. Do you know if any investigations have happened there?
That I don't know. I think the interesting thing about like some areas down south is, and I'm going to tread lightly with saying this, like they get kind of religious. So when you think about reporting or telling somebody you're seeing like black figures, I think people get really sensitive to that. So I don't really think that anything like serious has actually been done at that campus. I would love to kind of go back and just walk around with like some EMF and like a thermal or something and just kind of be like, hey, let's check this out. But I don't think they'd be down for that by any means. Even me being like a alumni in a way, I don't think they'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I think they need to be pretty open to that kind of thing. But
yeah.
Have you ever performed any sort of field research or investigation on your own?
So when it comes down to that, like I've definitely gone to I'll put it this way, I've gone to like this haunted kind of locations. I went to oh man, that's going to escape me right now. Of course, we'll put it this way. I know I've gone to like they do like kind of ghost tours around Kansas City where I used to live, and they kind of go to like an East Bottoms area and they talk about all these like old factories and you kind of go through. So that, I mean, I did that kind of like as a teenager. When I was in college and kind of like recently, it's been kind of mostly like basically if like friends have an area that they're interested in, we might kind of go hang out. We've gone to like a couple people's houses. I'm still kind of a novice when it comes down to like actually investigating in that kind of regard.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like recently with some of the things that have been going on at my house, for example, like I hate doing it because I just don't want to record anything. But like, for example, tonight we were sitting down for dinner and we thought we heard footsteps like coming from our like bedroom. So of course I'm going to flick on the phone and just kind of like let it record from that point. So there's really nothing that like pops up, like it hasn't really popped up and like responded back to me yet, but I'm kind of reluctant to do it at home. And I think you had like an episode a couple or maybe just someone within the fray where you're discussing where you almost don't want to bring it up, like you don't want to bring it up like in your home or do
Right.
anything like that. Maybe that wasn't you. I can't remember to be honest,
No,
but
no, that was me.
that was you. Okay,
I'm
good.
I'm very conscientious about that, especially now that I have kids, and
Yeah.
it's something that, I mean, I've never chosen to do, to have those experiences up
No.
until maybe since July when I did my first actual
Mhm.
paranormal investigation. But yeah, I certainly don't want that in my house, and if it were in my house, I would definitely be, having a serious conversation with whatever that was,
Yeah.
telling,
It's
setting those boundaries. So,
it's definitely interesting, like being in this space in certain times, like it like with the things that she deals with, like on a daily basis, like it doesn't surprise me that like the relationships that she builds, like something might come back with her or want to basically be in her presence for a little while.
mhm,
So I think after the first couple things that kind of happen, and you can kind of read through those on my website if you do choose to,
mhm.
it's kind of it kind of opened me up a little bit more. And then I also kind of had to understand like this isn't just happening to me, like this is something that's kind of constantly kind of going on. So, and it's something that she's had to deal with, like not even here but in other locations. So it's, I think nursing and I think anything in the medical field is like extremely spiritual. And I'm not a very spiritual person like anymore. My mom is probably going to hear that and like freak out. But the thing is, like, it's, I think that when you're dealing with like death and when you're dealing with those kind of circumstances, like if you have something that just follow you home, you kind of have to, like I said, kind of stand or think about standing your ground. Or in our case, like you have to tell it like, hey, this is our place. You really can't be here, type of thing. But it's been interesting to kind of live that kind of life and have it kind of like pop up randomly. But it is what it is.
Yeah, it's any healthcare worker I've spoken to who's had experiences like that. It's some say they have experiences at home, but a lot of them happen at work. And especially if you're involved in end of life care, if you're like a specialty nurse, like an ICU or the ER, where that stuff, I mean, it happens every day, and
Right.
it's kind of one of those things you don't like to talk about or acknowledge. Number one, just because it can be seen as insensitive to patients that are there.
Right.
But number two, it's like, I think you really get the crazy target on your back, I think, if you talk about it too much in that kind of
Right.
environment. So, I mean, I don't even share this podcast with a lot of my coworkers, just the ones I know who have an interest in it, and ones who
Mm-hmm.
probably are more willing to take it seriously. But yeah, as far as things following you home, at one point I considered that was a possibility from the kind of work I did, but I don't know. I kept looking for connections. I didn't witness death every day, although it happened in that building every day.
Right.
Um, but I don't know. There's just something about that where I just don't like it in my home. Like, I'm interested in it and
I
all
don't
that
blame
stuff. I wouldn't blame you for documenting, but not speaking to it, or I don't know. I don't know how you choose to
I
deal with
mean,
that.
the thing is, like, I feel like the fact is, I'm like glued to my phone because, like, with the other work that I do, like social media is like a big part of that. So I have to kind of have it around. So it's like if I have it at my disposal, it's like it's hard not to because it's so tempting just to just hit record on the app
Right.
and just kind of see if anything pops up because it's like we know it's kind of happening, but it's in. There's been others like circumstances where friends have been over and like doors have opened or things have kind of like happened that kind of freak them out and they're kind of leery about it. But it's it's one of those things like if I have something that I can be like, okay, like I actually have it recorded, like it's kind of like an accomplishment. The same time, it's kind of interesting because I these aren't my patients and these aren't the people that I took care of.
Right.
So if even if I found something or heard something, I'd probably keep it personal in a way because I just don't want to tread on her work life. I don't want to tread on like those relationships because they're not mine. I'm just kind of like in the middle of them. So
Yeah.
it's a really interesting kind of common ground, but it's also like I kind of want to sleep some nights, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, let me
yeah.
ask you this, because I think that maybe 98% of the stuff that's happened to me, it hasn't necessarily frightened me, like to produce like a fight or flight response. It's more of
Yeah.
like a startling, and then you're like, oh, that must be whatever you identify it as. And it's interesting, but I wouldn't say it's scary, minus, a couple things that have happened. But what things have happened to you that you would consider either frightening or that you just maybe left the experience saying, I do not want to experience that again?
Well, so I think, I mean, I've been touched. I've seen like shadows. I've kind of experienced like weird cold spots. Even like had an experience where I felt like someone wrapped like a wool blanket around me. That was kind of weird. And that actually happened at I don't condone this by any mean, but we were ghost hunting one night near a cemetery, and that kind of happened, which still freaks me out.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of hard to say, because I think for the most part when I've had experience, like even when I was like touched, like physically like touched, I still try to figure out what it was. And like in the article, I kind of explained it like I thought like I ran into like a spider web, and then I realized that there's way more pressure, and like it literally felt like a hand. Like I'm always looking for kind of like an explanation for it. Like I don't think I've ever been like genuinely just terrified and like had to like run
Right.
and I'll run away from something. I think I always try to like take it kind of like as it is and try to figure out and like rationalize it. Which is probably one reason why I really want this out there, is just because I think if more people know about it, more they're going to get comfortable with it, and like understand that this is a thing that people experience, or this is something that's definitely there. And then you don't really have those kind of circumstances. Now, like reading some of the things that I have read, I could tell you like, though, like some circumstances, like I could totally understand where people can have that fight or flight kind of thing, but I luckily haven't really witnessed that yet. And I mean, it's kind of one of those weird things, like being in this kind of area, like I kind of want that to happen, but at the same time, I'm like, do I really want that to happen? So it's kind of give and take.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't necessarily know that. I mean, I can't, it's hard to describe my mindset on it. I do look for those things, but there are just one or two that I'm just like, no, I don't want to see that again. It's not a good feeling, but at the same time, it's like you feel like you have to go out there and try to experience it and document it so that you don't feel crazy.
Right. Yeah, I think if I have to pick one thing that like I would say that freaked me out is like best way I can put it, I did. It's in my home. So like I'm sitting on my couch just watching TV, and literally I thought someone was in the house and was running at me. That's like probably the only time I like genuinely like got up and was like freaked out, because like you hear like the pitter patter footsteps like running at you, and you just don't know what it is. Yeah. And that was also one of those things where I still had to rationalize it, but that I literally jumped out of my seat and I was like trying to figure out what was going on, because I thought someone was in the house and someone was running at me. That's the only time I can really think of it.
But you didn't see anything?
I didn't see anything. Like that's the hard part about like some of this kind of stuff is like, and that's kind of the reason why I kind of jumped to my phone when like things like this happen, because like I said, I'm just hanging out on the couch. I wasn't even watching anything like kind of that would make my mind wander in any way. I think I was just watching like a Casey Neistat video on YouTube or something and doing work. And literally like, it's almost like if someone like had like tennis shoes on, like that kind of like plastic kind of pitter patter sound, like basically ran around like our kitchen island and then ran into our living room. Oh, and wow. I don't have any other way of explaining that. It was just kind of a weird circumstance. I don't know what it was. I don't know how to really explain that in any regards, but like that's the only time where I've actually felt like something may have been out to kind of like purposely scare me or get my attention in some way, and it got my attention, because I'll be honest, like I spent the next like 2 hours like walking around my house with my phone, like asking questions to like just whatever might be there. So yeah, it's like I said, it's a give and take kind of area with that kind of thing, but it's definitely interesting.
Well, now Unknown Midwest has a lot of different topics, similar to my podcast, where it's not just ghosts. You've got a lot of cryptozoology and like you said, the folklore. If you had to pick your favorite creature from either recent sightings or folklore, what would that be?
I think my favorite one, and it was the one that I really just spent like the most time on, and I got really like kind of ingrained in it for a little while, like doing like the design work and everything else for it. Like I think like Beast of Bray Road and like Dogman type creatures,
Mm-hmm.
just eerie. Like I've listened to other podcasts and I've listened to like other people talk about them. I've like basically doing my own research, like getting like deep diving into like Linda Godfrey's book and what is that, North America Dogman or Wolf. I can't think of that. There's a project that's out there that basically kind of dives into it. It takes like evidence and whatnot. But I think that is just definitely one thing I just don't ever want to see. like
Yeah.
I've seen wolves, like you've seen wolves at the zoo. Like I've like seen wolves like kind of like out like when I lived in Kansas, and like there's definitely like dogs and stuff. Like I'm cool with that kind of stuff. But the fact that like there's something that seems intelligent and that has like that kind of fear factor with it,
Mm-hmm.
is pretty intense. And that's kind of, I think that's why that's one of more of my favorite pieces. But it's also, it's kind of like you think about like dark presences with like the spiritual side, or like the ghost kind of side, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, like a lot of these kind of entities have like put off like a negative kind of vibe when people like witness them. And it's kind of like there's that whole experience, like you've got the smells, like you've got like just the vision of it, and then that presence that's kind of there. That's kind of an interesting realm. And like I honestly couldn't get enough of like Linda Godfrey's books and like the things she's talked about with like American like werewolves and like those kind of topics. It's an interesting one, and that's probably one that I'm going to dig into a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. Those are. I feel like I keep finding new things, and it's interesting that with all the paranormal community out there, kind of, I feel like it's becoming a more popular genre. You'd think you would have heard it all by now, but what amazes me is just new things keep popping up.
Yeah, and that's the kind of the reason why I feel like this was like a good time for us to get into it and then try to create what we are creating, is just because it's kind of like you said, there's so many topics. But the other thing that I kind of want to get away from, and it's kind of like you get all this like fake news type articles like in the media. Like my main goal was I wanted to make a site that could talk about all these different incidents and like give them like an open-ended kind of like metaphor, like not metaphor, like kind of talk about them, so people can build their own conclusions. But I'm also trying to give them information that I trust. And that's also kind of one reason, like if you look at my website, I don't have ads. Like I don't want to make money off this. I just want to put information out there, and I just want people to kind of recognize that in a good way. Like I think I kind of like look up if like getting into this kind of a field. I keep kind of like looking at guys like Lauren Coleman, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're just genuinely interested in these topics. They give people like an amazing kind of experience with them, like whether it's their chats or like the Cryptozoology Museum. Like they're writing books to kind of keep themselves afloat and kind of keep themselves relevant. But I feel like when you hear those people talk, or you hear them on podcasts or radio or whatever it is, like they're just genuinely interested in it. And I think that's like our main goal, is just to kind of hit these topics. Yeah, they're online, but we want to keep them as real to the experience, like as true as possible. We're not trying to like convolute anything or make things worse for some of these topics.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of like the end goal. Like I like, for example, right now, like on my to-do list, I have like stuff about like Iowa Bigfoot, which I mean, I've like I've heard people talk about like things like Bigfoot in Iowa, and that's kind of where it led me to like the recent thing with the Virgus Trails Hairy Man. Was kind of like middle of Minnesota, and kind of maybe like if they're out there, like possibly getting to like cornfields and actually enjoying those kind of areas, because you've got deer, you've got resources, you've got like basically like I had posted a video the other week of basically hanging out in around the Charles River, and that area is just kind of crazy. Like you forget you're in Iowa. It's just immense, like just wilderness everywhere. There's like lakes and streams that kind of like pop in there. Then you've got cornfield, and then it's back to wilderness. It's just, if something wanted to hide, like it could do that. And it's interesting that like you've heard people talk about Bigfoot in Iowa, but it's not kind of like this big thing yet. So the things that I have seen online, I can't really trust them. And my sister's kind of looking into like deep diving like Des Moines Register and like all these different things, like look and see if we can find like actual like journalism type pieces or see what's really out there. But it's, like I said, end goal is just trying to get clear, concise information out to the masses in a genuine way.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Iowa because I've never been to Iowa, but I think the extent of my knowledge comes from the movie Field of Dreams, and I just you have to have some pretty tall corn to hide an 8 foot tall bipedal animal or creature.
I mean, it's pretty immense. I was expecting you to say children in the corn for whatever reason, but
no, well, yeah, I watched that a long time ago. That wasn't the first one that came to mind, but yeah, I don't know, Iowa. I live in California, and everybody kind of has their preconceived notions about this too. But I mean, I literally when I was in college, I would surf in the morning, and I had a season lift pass at the local ski lift. And I could be, I could surf and snowboard in the same day. And
that's the life.
Oh yeah. You couldn't beat it. Of course I'm old now and I don't do that anymore, but I think there's misperceptions about these locations, but, I am interested to know what kind of feedback you've had from, the general paranormal community since you've launched.
It's been kind of interesting. Like I was expecting to just have to like really hustle and like actually start like making connections. And I feel like we kind of got on Twitter just like recently, and I feel like Twitter's kind of dead as it is. Like it's not really a really well approached social media anymore that I feel like. I could be very wrong on that, but that's just like the feeling that I have and a lot of my close friends have about Twitter. Mm-hmm. But the people that are on Twitter and that are on the social media kind of groups like Facebook and like Instagram kind of as of late, I think just posting those articles and like people like that are looking for like different hashtags and different things that like I've gotten quite a few messages and responded to those and like had like a couple like interesting relationships kind of pop up just from like people that are interested in it. But kind of recently there's a group that I think we're going to try to do a little bit of embedding with, or at least I am, that's around the Kansas City area. Mm-hmm. I guess they come up to Iowa from time to time, and there's a couple like favorites that they have, favorite spots they have, and I'm probably just going to get in with them, do some interviews with them, like chat with them, like try to just basically become a sponge and soak up as much as I can with them. Mm-hmm. But it's been pretty positive, and I'll be honest, I was expecting to go 6 months and not have anybody like message me and say, oh, this article's great. Like I didn't expect to get that. Yeah. And it's been kind of fun to like watch the like analytics of our website and kind of see like the feedback we get about it, and like some positive, some I think I get a lot of great constructive criticism as well. Mm-hmm. That's like, for example, like the first article, like I went just all out on, like the best way I can put it, like I tried to make it an easy read, like something that you could get through, read, kind of ask yourself questions. But I really like just like creating like graphics or like graphic art when I can. Mm-hmm. And I thought like, I'm just going to make this timeline, and I'm just going to throw it out there. It's like something simple, basic. It took me a little while to get it like all kind of worked out in my brain how I want it to look, but it's kind of like one of those things, you're done with the article, then you can kind of go through and like piece all these like pictures of like all the pictures of the puzzle together. And I got like a lot of good feedback about that. And then I didn't do it on my next article, and people were like, why didn't you do that again? And I'm like, it just didn't fit well. So it's interesting that I didn't mean to like start something and like set such a high goal that it was kind of hard to kind of get back to it. But it was kind of interesting as I got that feedback from one person. They were like, I love the graph. Like you should bring the graph back. And the last couple articles haven't been kind of richly filled with data yet. Mm-hmm. And especially like we did one on the Van Meter monster. Like that thing came out in like the early 1900s. Like there's like a couple articles about it. Like there's a gentleman that wrote a book about it. There's not a whole lot of like about that. So it's like Jeremiah like is owning that. He's like digging through as much as he can, but there's certain things that I can't always get like that in depth with. But it's been great. Like the feedback that we've gotten and the like just the camaraderie that I can see that people want to help or vice versa is out there as well, which is great.
So if you don't mind me asking, where do you get most of your traffic from?
So it's I love that I bashed Twitter like 10 seconds ago, but I literally a lot of it's coming from Twitter. The next one is Facebook, and the thing about like Facebook now, like the way that this is going to go like I'm really big into like entrepreneurial stuff, and I think you can maybe appreciate that and understand that like the way that Facebook's actually getting information out is kind of like it's good and bad, kind of like the fake news thing. But I feel like if people are interested in these kind of topics, like they should tackle Facebook like right now. Like I feel like it's a great spot for people to post their ideas, there's so many people on it, and then mixed with their ads and everything else, like you can really kind of get a topic out. And I think that's like the main area that I've seen us kind of benefit from. I don't think we have a whole lot of followers on there yet, but it's interesting. Like when we post something, I might spend a couple bucks and like, try to get it out to a couple different regions, right? Like, like say for example, I did something on, we did the Virgus Trails, right? I feel like I'm selling like trade secrets right now, but it's kind of like I basically said I want like Minnesota and I want Iowa and I want like Michigan, like kind of hear about these most, and I did like that kind of demographic,
right?
And there's a gentleman that was I think basically traveled like through Minnesota, and like I guess he kind of stumbled on that article probably just because of that ad. So it's kind of like it was kind of fun like talking with him. Like I had a couple comments and I sent him a message, like private message, and started talking about some of the stuff that he was bringing up in the comments. But like I think there's so many resources out there now that if you really want to do something and you want to be seen, or you want someone to like listen to you, or like you want an audience, like I think with social media, it's people are getting more hesitant about what they read and what they click on. But if you're giving them something that's like really well produced and really well managed, like they appreciate it and they actually take it in very well. But I think it's kind of like an interesting beast with social media. We'll put it that way. But Instagram's like a tougher one, just because like I'm not going to post a picture of like Van Meter. I did, but I mean I'm not going to post like constant pictures of that. I don't really feel like flooding people. I think it's just kind of an interesting thing where I'll probably use that just to share stories or share quick videos. But yeah, Facebook's huge. I love it.
Yeah. Well, you probably touched on this a little bit already, but what are some of your short-term and long-term goals for the site?
So, well, it's kind of like a personal like goal. I mean, I feel like I'm 26. I'm pretty young. I mean, I'll be honest. And I feel like I could have done something like this like years ago, like even like say when I was 20. But I think it took me a while to kind of mature on that and kind of get it out there. And I think because of that maturity, like now I can actually get this properly pushed out. So like my goal is to try to like write something every week, and it's brutal. I'll be honest. And I kind of like I was going to write something this week on basically I just talked about it earlier, like Union Station, like about like the whole like mafia connection, like the ghosts that are coming through there, like all the traffic because of the world wars. And I kind of wanted to do something on Union Station, like some like events that have happened there. And I kind of had to take a step back and go like, this isn't ready for me to put it out. So I'm just going to have to like take a check mark on that one and be like, I couldn't do it this week. But it's kind of like a goal to try to push content out and just make it meaningful content. So that's one thing I want to get like more articles. I want to get like more people interested in it as best I can. Yeah. I want people. My main goal is like I said, I want it to be clear, concise, and everything else. But I also want people to like question it and like actually get really interactive with it. I think I don't really want to do like video blogs or anything like that. That's just not who I am. But I think it'd be interesting like once we can actually get out with paranormal groups, like actually make like a really well produced like short or something for like YouTube, or do like really good stories for like Snapchat or Instagram when it comes down to it. But I think because of my age and like the people that I know and who I'm kind of around, it's interesting because I'm going to use this example. Like a couple days ago, I went over to watch that new Top Gear show. It's a Grand Tour with one of my buddies, like who we've been connected with like since I moved to Des Moines like years ago. Mm-hmm. And one of his friends came over from his office, and we were all kind of chatting. We were talking about just like crazy engineering, right? So we were talking about like spy planes and like all the engineering behind that. And then it literally turned from like us talking about like skunk works and all those kind of like intricate pieces of like espionage, and it went to like the crazy conspiracy theories, and then it got joined into basically like folklore. Mm-hmm. So it was almost like perfect because like I didn't ask my friend John to do this, but he pulled up my website, threw it on his TV, and then was like, "Oh yeah, check this out," and like start talking about it. And his friend goes, "Well, you should do this. Like you like here's this like crazy thing that's been going on around like Ames, Iowa, and like all the college kids are like freaked out by it. You should do an article about that." So I think goal is to kind of like, because of like all those pieces and like getting people like talking about it. Like I think doing shorts or doing something that's going to actually get more young people like still interested in it, and like maybe researching like the elders in the field is like kind of a goal. And like it's a hard goal to kind of like even think about putting on my shoulders, but I want people like to get past all like the fake crap on the internet and then actually get to like these real pieces and actually make some headway. Because I feel like you've got guys that like Lauren Coleman and like Stanton Friedman, which that was an awesome interview, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Kudos. Yeah, like those guys, like they're huge in their field, and the reason they're there is because they put in all that time and effort. But they also did it when they started when they were younger, and vice versa. And they're just aging at this point. So I think getting like 20 and 30-year-olds like interested in these fields and like basically flexing their muscle on things they're interested in, or getting them inspired to do those, is kind of like I said, it's like a huge way for me to even think about putting on my shoulders. And I don't think I want to be some beneficial impact to that in the future. And this is going to take a lot of time and a lot of hustle to actually get that out there. But that's a big broad term end goal, but I just really want people interested in it. That's it.
Well, I think you've got your work cut out for you. There's a lot of hardcore skeptics that are pretty close-minded about this kind of stuff. Right. Let alone the challenge of bringing it to people that may not have previously heard about it. But I think you're doing great work so far. I've really enjoyed a lot of the articles you've posted. So great job. Keep it up. Tell us where we can find more about you and any of your current projects going on.
Yeah. So you've got me on Twitter. It's unknown_Midwest on Twitter. Facebook, you can just search Unknown Midwest. Instagram, Unknown Midwest. Personally, I think if people want to reach out to me, there's contacts through our website, which you can choose. It's unknownmidwest.com. It's probably the best way to reach out to me. Other than that, I mean, like I said, I'm glued. I hate saying it because it drives me nuts. I'm like a typical millennial, right? I'm just like glued to my phone. But
hey, I'm not a millennial, and I'm glued to mine, so no worries.
Hey, they're addicting, right? That's how it goes. I think just online, like social media, website, just any way you want to reach out to me. I'm normally going to get back to you pretty quickly.
All right. Well, Andrew, I do want to say thank you once again for joining me here. It's been a great conversation. I hope I didn't go over time too much here.
I was just thinking at the same time. I kind of went on tangents there, so I hope I didn't go too long.
No, that's great. Once again, this is Andrew from Unknown Midwest. I'm going to have all of the links you mentioned in my show notes, and please keep in touch. Let me know how everything's going from time to time.
I will do. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Deviatus. You can find all the links discussed today at deviatus.com/unknownmidwest. I just want to send a big shout out to thank Andrew for appearing on the show. This was actually the 19th episode. Can you believe it? 19 episodes in. And it's that time where I believe I want to take a little bit of a step back. I'm going to go on a little hiatus, but don't worry, I'll be back in a couple months. In the meantime, I would seriously, really like your feedback on the show. I've been getting some feedback. I'd like a little bit more, but if you really want to have a stake in where this show goes going forward, if you have any opinions on what kind of stories I should be covering or guests to interview, please feel free to email me at deviatuspod@gmail.com. I just want to thank everyone for listening. So far, I've got over 7,000 downloads, which, it's not making the iTunes top charts like everybody thinks you should, but I think that's pretty significant for someone who's come on the scene and was just basically starting from scratch. It shows me that there's enough people interested in what we're doing at Deviatus for me to definitely keep it going. So thank you. And if you haven't yet taken the time to go to iTunes and rate the show, I would really love it if you would. I would so much appreciate it because that does help me gain more visibility and attract more potential listeners. During the hiatus, I'd like to encourage everyone to follow me on social media. I'm at Twitter and Instagram at DeviatusPod, and you can find me on Facebook as well. So I hope you all had some happy holidays, and I will see you next year.